What's up, guys? Welcome to the finale of Spooktober21. Welcome to night 30, guys. My name is Kyle, your host. Welcome to Project Potter. Appreciate you guys stopping by. This is the final night of Spooktober21, guys. So we're wrapping it up with Halloween, the movie, the 1978 John Carpenter classic. I was a little duped by this movie, and I'll go into that in a bit, guys. But if you haven't seen the channel before, what we do is a quick recap, best scenes, worst scenes, favorite character, worst character, score out of 10. You guys already know. So thanks for checking out the channel, guys. Go check out the other content. We got Socktober going on right now, so go check out that. Also, guys, happy Halloween. Appreciate you guys for anyone who's watched up to this point, or if you guys are just jumping in now. We have 30 nights of content, guys, so go check out the other 29 nights. Scary video games and movies throughout every night of October. So go check that out, guys. And yeah, here we go. So, guys, Halloween, the 1978 John Carpenter film. This movie is famous for its score. And this movie is all about Michael Myers. And we open up with young Michael Myers, and he's standing outside. And this is really cool because the camera opens up, and it's just the camera outside of the house. And it's a very different vibe. It's like, oh, it's like you really feel like someone's watching. The people in there are being watched. And so the camera is very unsettling, and I really like the effect here. And this is young Michael looking in there. And then his, I think it's his sister, Judith, who's like messing around with this guy. They go upstairs, and Michael gets jealous or protective, but way too protective. And he goes up there, and he's got a clown mask on, and we see it through his mask. And he stabs and kills his sister. He goes downstairs. His parents come home, and they're like, Michael. And he throws the mask down. We see young Michael's face, and he looks just like a normal kid, but he's got obviously a bloody knife. And then we open up to Halloween. And we cut forward here, guys. And we're in the same neighborhood. We find out about Dr. Loomis, who was like watching Michael as a mental patient, because obviously after that happened, Michael was admitted to like a mental ward or psych ward, and somehow got out. I think he ends up escaping or something. I don't really know. But basically, Dr. Loomis is like terrified, and he's like, it's pure evil in his eyes. And he's like, I've never seen anything like it. And Michael ends up getting in a car somehow, and then they're like, I didn't know Michael knew how to drive. And he's like, he didn't. And I'm like, okay, so how did he get there? But Michael's like a really good driver. Dude, he's like got his hands at like 12 and 2 over here, like when he's driving. So I don't know what's going on there. But basically, he goes back to Haddonfield, Illinois. He's going back to his childhood home there. Don't know why, really, but he's just going to like kill more teenagers. I don't know why he's just obsessed with killing. It doesn't really make sense because he's not like exacting revenge on anyone. He just likes killing. It's probably just a dopamine hit that his fucked up brain gets. But we follow our main character, Lori, and she's going through, and this is Jamie Lee Curtis's debut here. So it's interesting that it says introducing, and then we saw a couple movies ago for Nightmare on Elm Street where it was introducing Johnny Depp. So very interesting thing there. But Lori's going through, and her friends are kind of shitty to her. They're picking on her, and, she's like the prude, and she's like, oh, I'm not going to be hooking up with anyone, blah, blah, blah. She's like kind of strict. And she tells them one day that she forgot her chemistry book. And they're like, oh, I forgot my chemistry book all the time. I'm a math book. And they're like, I don't even bring any books to school. And I was like, well, you're going to flunk out of school then. She notices like this car following, and she notices Michael standing in the bush and all these things, guys. And there's the classic moments. This movie, let me say, is at its best when we have the score, which happens a lot in this movie. And the score is amazing. So I don't blame it for that one. But Michael's standing there, Michael pops out of there, Michael's in the background, all these things, guys. I know I say it every review, but I'm really not going to spend a lot of time on the review here because Michael comes back. He ends up killing everyone in the neighborhood. There's one scene where Lori goes to get help as she's running from Michael at the end, and the neighbor turns their light on. You see the neighbor open their blinds, and then they turn the blinds down and then turn their light off. So Lori's looking for help, and that person is an asshole and just went back at their house and pretend like they weren't home. And it's like, dude, like at least bring her inside, like obviously you don't want the monster that's chasing her, but bring her inside at least and try and save her, dude, or figure out what's going on. Like they just ignored her like she was no one. So maybe that person looked out and they saw Michael Myers and they were like, yo, fuck that. Like, sorry, Lori, you're on your own. So maybe I don't blame the neighbor as much, but it's still a shitty move when she's looking for help. So yeah, guys, she's facing Michael Myers. Michael Myers is the star of the show. He's really creepy. He is just a murdering machine. You guys know the deal, but we're going to kind of jump right in here, guys, into best scenes. Any scene with Michael Myers, let me tell you, fantastic. He's creepy. His mask is creepy. Anytime he's going against Lori when he's in the back. When that girl, I think her friend's name, it might be Mary, I forget. She goes to go into the car to leave. The car's locked. she goes back, and then it turns out that she gets the keys, and then she goes to open the door, and the door's unlocked, and she doesn't comment like, oh, that's weird, the door's unlocked, because she went to go pull it and it was locked. She went back inside to get the keys, but then the door was unlocked. Don't know how that happened because well, actually, I do know how it happened because Michael Myers was already in the car and he must have locked the door when she went to go get the keys, then unlocked it. I don't know why he didn't just leave it unlocked. It doesn't make sense. But anyway, Michael Myers is in the back and the high pitched like music plays and then he ends up killing her. Anytime he's on screen is great. When he's chasing Laurie at the end there, she like stabs him a couple times and then he's sitting down and there's that like iconic shot where Laurie's in the foreground and in the background you just see Michael like raise up. Like he just sits up because he can't be killed and it's unbelievable, dude. The scene where Michael kills Dave, I think it's Dave is his name, where he's like the nerdy guy and he's like, come on, like he's talking to the girlfriend and then Michael like holds him up and then stabs him and then the knife holds him up, which realistically you're like, okay, well the weight would go on the knife and then but anyway, it's a cool effect where he's just sitting there and then Michael just kind of looks at him and turns his head a couple times like a dog. And I was like, oh, that's fucked up, dude. I don't like that at all. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a couple scenes where Michael goes back and forth in the neighborhood and those are really creepy. The kids that Laurie is watching, especially the nephew or whatever that she's watching, he's like, I saw the boogeyman. She's like, dude, shut up. There's no boogeyman out there. And then he's like, I just saw Michael Myers carry a woman into the house. Like, but the kid doesn't say he carried someone into the house. He just says, she's like, there's no boogeyman. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he just stops about it. So yeah, those are some of the best scenes, guys. Jumping into the worst scene. This movie is tricky because there's not really worst scenes. There's just a couple of scenes that you're like, oh, okay. Like, that didn't really need to be in here. Michael is like always lurking, right? And I think that's a really strong point of this movie. I think it's a strength of this movie for sure. So there's a couple of scenes where he's hanging outside. Even though every scene isn't like take your breath away, great, fantastic, like this is amazing, there's not really too many bad scenes, right? Like it's the neighbor scene is bad because it's like, what the fuck is that neighbor doing that they're not letting Laurie in the house? That was like the one thing where I was like, okay, like she knocked and why would you have someone turn the light on and then not let her in? Like just have them not turn the light on so no one's home. Like it doesn't make any sense. So she doesn't get in there. There's a lot of scenes that just like aren't as good as I remember them being. So they're not necessarily bad scenes. I'm just like, oh, okay. You can tell it was a low budget. I think it was $300,000 this movie was made for, which is crazy because it crushed at the box office. But you can see that sometimes because like Laurie and her friends will be walking down the street and then they cut. And sometimes it works in the favor. Like when Michael Myers is in the car, that's genuinely like disturbing. And then he shows up. But there's also times where Michael Myers shows up. And this is kind of my problem with this movie. He's like he is a couple times in broad daylight. Like when he shows up at school or whatever, and no one's like, what the fuck? Who is that, dude? Like, or someone's like, hey, like there's no like adult that comes over and like confronts him. He just is like kind of able to get away with it. And then obviously when he's following the kid, I think it's like Laurie's nephew or whatever, that's creepy. And it's like in the car with him and he slows down like as the kid's walking and the kid doesn't notice. That is more believable because he's kind of just driving around even though he's being sketchy in the car. There's a couple of times at night where I know that it's a small neighborhood. It's weird because there was no one outside. Now, I didn't know if that meant like Michael murdered everyone. We saw him kill a couple people, but it's Halloween and I'm like, why aren't people, there should be kids trick-or-treating and adults out there. I know it's a small neighborhood, but I didn't see like, you see a couple kids run by at the beginning and then towards the end when Michael's like chilling outside, no one's outside and no one's checking on the screaming or what's going on. And so Michael's just standing up there and I'm like, you got to tell me that no one would notice Michael standing or no one would be like, hey, like, or like watch out or like something like that. You know what I mean? So that was a little bit of a stretch for me. Yeah. There's not a whole bunch of great scenes in this movie, but there's not really too many scenes that I would say are like really bad or terrible. There's just kind of a lot of scenes that are kind of like meh or like kind of just feel like filler, I would say. Okay, guys, my favorite character, I mean, it's Michael Myers, dude. It's easily Michael Myers. He's like an absolute horror icon, a legend. His mask is so creepy. The one thing I will say, I don't like his breathing in this movie. It's creepier when Michael is just standing there and he's not doing anything. They like emphasize the breathing. We also get a shot where Laurie takes his mask off and it's like the actor, his face, and you see Michael's whole adult face. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I don't think you see his face in the rest of the series, basically. because they realize that it's just creepier for him to have the mask on and for people to be like, I don't know who this is, but he's clearly like messed up and demented. Michael Myers grunts and breathes a lot. There were a couple of scenes that were really good where he's like standing there and the music is going and it was like great, but then you hear him like breathing almost like Darth Vader, and I'm like, this would be creepier if I didn't hear him breathing, because he's like laboring kind of, and I'm like, in a way it adds to the creepiness because it's like his breathing is fucked up, or like, you know, he's got something is clearly wrong with his brain. But in another way, I was like, I want him to be like this invincible force, like he's not even trying to kill these people. And so when he's like holding people up or stuff, he's like grunting and stuff, and I'm like, I don't want that. I want my Michael Myers to be strong. I want him to be an independent man. Okay. I want him to just hold someone up and just be like, yeah, this is nothing for me. That's just a little nitpick, but yeah, I mean, Michael Myers was easily the best character. He's one of the greatest horror characters of all time. He's so creepy. And there's a couple of scenes where he's like, when Laurie's there and then like you see just barely his face in the background, so creepy. Obviously, anytime when he sits up from there and then goes after Laurie, anytime he's just walking, it's so awesome. And I talked about a couple of reviews ago, guys, about how I didn't find Freddy Krueger scary at all because he was flailing around. Michael Myers is the exact opposite, where he's slowly walking, and like he also has moments where he just disappears quickly. When Loomis shoots him like 6 times, he falls off the balcony, and then he goes to look for him at the very end of the movie. And Michael's gone, and then the music kicks in, and you're like, oh shit, that's scary. And that's how the movie ends there. But he has like a scene where Laurie looks out, and there's like the laundry or the shirts hanging up, and Michael's standing there, and then she like looks away for a second and looks back, and he's gone. And you're like, how is he moving so quickly? But that's kind of his mystique, is that he moves so quickly. There's a scene where Mary, whatever her name is, on the phone, and it's great because the camera cuts and then it cuts back, and Michael's there, and it's like that pitch that comes in. So I thought his placement was awesome, and anytime he's in the scene, you always felt like Michael was just waiting and watching. I really think that worked well, and I think Michael was the best character in this one. Okay, guys, worst character for this one, I'm actually going to go with Dr. Loomis. I really liked him the first time. So full disclosure, guys, this is my second time watching this movie. I really loved this movie the first time, and maybe not as high on it the second time, but I'll get into that in just a bit. But Dr. Loomis, I loved before. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I don't know if it was my AMC Plus app or if it was just the movie, but the dialogue was really low and the action and everything else was really loud. So I would have to like turn my volume all the way up for the dialogue. And then as soon as anything fucking happened or the score came in, I had to be like, and like turn it down. So that kind of took me out of it, but that's maybe just a technical thing. I don't know if it was designed like that. I don't remember that happening the first time, but Dr. Loomis I thought was really cool the first time. But then I look back and it's like, okay, number one, Park's in a handicap spot, dude, when he doesn't have a handicap plate, so he's just being a douchebag. Number two, the cop or the sheriff with him is like, you just seem like you're just scared. Like, you know, he's like, he's supposed to know all this thing about Michael. And it's great that he's afraid of Michael, but he comes in at the end and shoots Michael, but like, he's not really like that courageous. I mean, there's like kids playing a prank early going into Michael's childhood home, and he's like, you better get your ass out of there. And I'm like, what, dude? Like, he's like waiting in the bushes, and then he's like got a smirk on it. Like, I don't know, it's weird. But Dr. Loomis was kind of a bitch in this movie, and I like the actor, but I wasn't as impressed with him. He seemed like he was always a step behind. Like, he didn't seem like he really knew what was going on. He was supposed to be like the expert. But yeah, he was my least favorite character. Hey guys, that brings us to the score. This one, I am surprised because I thought that, let me explain this, guys. This is how I was duped with this movie, okay? First time I watched this movie, didn't know what to expect, but I heard great things about it, loved it. Going into this one, I was like, oh, I love Halloween, gonna go out on a great note. And I watched this movie and I was duped because I underestimated. Well, I mixed up the score with the movie. So the score is incredible. It is absolutely a 10 out of 10. Amazing, incredible, all-time score. Whenever you hear that score, whether you're watching like a TikTok video or you're on Reddit or whatever, or YouTube, it's amazing. It's so good. And every Halloween, like, you want to hear that. And you see like people put on the Mike Myers costume and go around and like Ubers and stuff, and you hear the music. It's amazing. Because I remember the score so fondly, I thought that meant that the movie was fantastic, but it's really not. I mean, this movie it's not a great movie, and it's very low budget, and I really noticed it this time, where I feel like the first time I was just like, I didn't know what to expect. This time I was like, oh, like there's a lot of scenes that I'm just like, this is slow and kind of boring, and it's low budget, and some of the scenes work. Like don't get me wrong, Michael in the car, the opening scene when Michael's there, scenes where Michael was like right in the back or right in the, yeah, I guess the foreground, and then like he's looking at something, worked for me for the most part. But there were scenes, like I said, where Michael's standing there and someone would have definitely seen him, and I'm like, dude, this is unrealistic to me that they didn't notice Michael standing there. The score is amazing. Michael Myers is amazing. It's still tense. It was definitely less scary for me the second time, and there was definitely like, I thought they would build him up a little bit more. This is a 7/7 for me, guys. It's not a bad movie. It's still Halloween. It's still spooky. Jamie Lee Curtis is okay. I thought I liked your performance more the first time I watched it. Everything just felt a little down. Michael Myers held up, of course, because it's fucking Michael Myers and he's the best. But everything else, I feel like I was like, oh, this felt like a big moment the last time. And now I'm kind of like, okay. And maybe it's just because I've been watching these other horror movies, and I've been watching some really good horror movies. Like I've been watching Scream, I've been watching Shutter Island, The Conjuring, and it's like these are all great movies and scary movies, intense movies. And it's not that this movie is intense. The scenes where Michael like just appears and they have like that high pitched like piano or whatever, awesome. Like I love that stuff. And obviously this was 1978. This really set the tone for everything else to come. So you have to keep in mind too, or I should say, I have to keep in mind that this was like the movie that really set the tone and changed the whole genre, the slasher genre, if I can say that, forever. And so I understand that, and I understand that this movie isn't as modernized, it doesn't hold up as well, it doesn't age as well, but there still is a creepiness and a feeling, and I still don't mind watching this movie. Like if I'm at like a party or something and someone has Halloween on, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a Halloween party, whatever. Great. Like I'll still watch it, and I don't hate this movie by any means. It's just an average to above average movie. And I would say I would probably lean more towards average because again, the score, I mixed up the score with the actual quality of the movie. Score is incredible. The movie, not so much, but it's still a fun time. And the ending, I think, really sticks with you, where he looks down and Michael's gone, and then you get the music cue, and then the credits roll, and you're like, oh shit, that's cool. Like that's very cool. That's very creepy. And it's like, how did Michael? Not only is Michael not dead, but he fucking ran away already. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. But yeah, this is just I would say an okay movie, but definitely not the worst one I've seen. Okay, guys, well, that brings us to the end of Spooktober 21. That is the end of our journey, guys. I just want to say thank you, guys, to anyone who checked out the content, anyone who's been following along, or even if you guys are just jumping in for the first time, like I said, go check out the other 29 nights of content. I've had a blast doing this, guys. It's been really great to just like sit here in October and get in the spooky mood and watch a bunch of movies that I've never seen. I really enjoyed it. I really was surprised at a lot of things, and it's opened me up to certain things. I feel like I'm not missing out as much, and it's just great. I like that we can turn it over to November now, but I had a blast here for October, guys. So next Halloween, or next October, next Spooktober, I should say, we're going to do something different because obviously we can't keep up this pace of content every night. I am also relieved because, guys, I got to be honest, putting out content every single night is absolutely exhausting, and so I am very excited for the calendar to turn over, and I have a few days to just relax and chill and not worry about having to do the stuff. And all of the content is fun. Don't get me wrong. I love making the content for you guys. I love the channel, but it is still a lot of work. Even if it's fun, it is still work. It's still editing. It's still watching the movies. It's still uploading. It's all of that. So even though I had a blast doing this and I don't regret it, I am definitely not going to be keeping up with that pace next year. So we'll do something different for next year. I'll think about it. I'll brainstorm, obviously, for next year. But yeah, again, thank you guys. Appreciate all of you guys for stopping by. If you did like the content, please subscribe if you can, like, comment, go check out the other content, of course. Happy Halloween, guys. And until next year, guys, stay spooky.